Hey, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to go over a very detailed installation of these struts right here. Let's take a look at it from down below. Okay, from down below you see here these red struts. Now these are Koni struts. Today's video is going to be a very long video, very detailed. So I'll make sure to put some timestamps in the video description. Make sure to check that out so you can fast forward to any sections that are relevant to you. The other thing that's different in this video, or right now compared to the video you will see, is that I've reinstalled these Sumo springs in the front. And through some testing, what I found out or discovered was that I actually like the handling characteristics better with the Sumo springs back end. And my overall, these struts, they really help with the porpoising, that is the bouncing up and down, especially if you hit dips or expansion joints on bridges. So this really helps out, and the Sumo springs, like the original, it really helped with any kind of wind characteristic or semi-trucks passing you. So that's one thing that's different. In the video that you're going to see, it does say that I'm going to take these out. I have taken them out and since put them back in. So that's what you're going to see. Today I'm going to go over the installation of new struts on the front of my RV. Now the part that I'm using today is the Koni adjustable. If you look closely, it says adjustable. These are red in color, of course. If you go on Koni's website or on the parts list for a Sprinter van, you will see there's numerous different types of red shocks or struts. But I'm specifically looking at the adjustable struts. And there's the part number. Part number was actually hard to find on the websites to make sure that it fits on this new generation chassis. But I'll go over the adjustment of this strut, as well as how I have everything set up from the beginning. Now, my RV is lifted off the ground from the leveling jacks. I do have some wooden blocks on the back. So safety, of course, everyone needs to be responsible for their own safety. I do also have a jack stand on the control arm. And I have this floor jack here. It's going to support basically this hub assembly here, because when you remove this strut, the strut is what actually holds the whole hub assembly here. And these two bolts here, if you look at it carefully, these bolts actually control the camber of this whole hub here. So I do want to get this lined up back where it was. I do have an alignment appointment already set up, so you should get an alignment after. And one thing different that I learned on this whole suspension of the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, in this generation specifically, the previous ones were probably the same, but this strut assembly, usually there's an actual coil spring here, but this suspension here is, I think they call it a transverse spring. The spring, I probably can't pick this up on camera, but the spring actually arches all the way from one wheel to the other. It's more like an L-shaped spring. So the other thing, if you want to look at this is the front Sumo spring. I'm going to actually take this off because I do want to do an independent test of that Koni adjustable strut without it. So I will be putting the factory bump stops back in and removing the Sumo springs here. With the wheels off, the Sumo springs are much easier to install and uninstall, I guess. So if you'd like to see the detail of this, stick around and I'll show you how I did it. One thing I did do before I started was I sprayed some Boeshield T9 on the outside of this hub. Now this whole hub had some surface rust everywhere, so I sprayed some of that on there to give it some basically anti-corrosion protectant. And at the same time, I also sprayed it on this sensor here and this sensor assembly here, and it's really to make those clips come off easier. So you will have to, once you have the wheel off and everything's supported correctly, you will have to remove two sensors that are a little bit in the way. Here, right here, I don't know what sensor this is, but there's a little push button right here. You want to push that or squeeze it and pull this out at the same time. And we're gonna wire tie this when it's all done. Then that sensor here comes back and connects to the back of this sensor. Now this sensor here, again, you shouldn't have to force anything, but there's a little tab right here. I probably cannot pick that up on camera very well, but that little tab, you push it to the front towards the bumper. And when you do that, you can also lift up on this at the same time. But it's, let me see if I can get this better. So it's this little tab right here. You want to push it or pull it towards the front bumper, and then you can lift the whole assembly up. So now that we have these up or off, I'll wire tie these so they're out of the way. Okay, what I'm going to do here is now this is an adjustable strut. That means obviously you can adjust the firmness of this or the dampening effect of this strut. And let me go over now. These installation instructions are actually pretty terrible on how to adjust this strut. I actually couldn't figure it out from the instructions, but basically what you have to do, I've had adjustable Koni adjustables before. It has to be collapsed all the way, and you're gonna feel some resistance once. I guess the best way to put it is once you put it in, you'll feel where it goes into a groove or a slot. But from the, I'm gonna put it back to where the factory was. From the factory setting, it was in the loosest setting, which is counterclockwise. You actually can't loosen it anymore. So this is the way it comes, and you need to turn it clockwise, again pushing all the way in, and you'll know if it's working. And you need to turn it clockwise all the way, and once it does go all the way, it's going to lock. It won't spin anymore. You do have to loosen it just slightly to get that tension off there, then that, so it doesn't bind, and that's it. So push down all the way, and when you feel it go into a groove, you start spinning it clockwise. It turns a couple of turns, and then when it locks or it doesn't turn anymore, back it off just a little bit to remove the binding. So I have both struts in the firmest setting, because once you have this in, you won't be able to, unfortunately, you won't be able to adjust it. It's like a one and done. You have to remove the assembly to adjust it again. Okay, I'm gonna zip tie these wires out of the way. That way I don't end up breaking any sensors and turning a small job into a bigger job. I think that's one thing about any modifications you make, is sometimes you go into an easier project and it ends up being a much tougher project. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen here. We'll see how that goes. Okay, let me move this out of the way like that. The next thing we're going to do is the Sumo spring removal. I've already have it loosened, and I'm just going to take it out with this now. Said well, I don't think I need, I probably can show this part because I already have it loose. So I will take, now that the Sumo spring is out, here's a good comparison. Here's the Sumo spring, and here's the factory bump stop. So how these Sumo springs work is it's always compressed in between this control arm and this frame assembly here. So I guess it basically stiffens everything up. The offset is that your suspension is going to be a little bit bouncier. Now hopefully this spring and this new shock assembly, maybe I won't even need that Sumo spring. So now I need to fish out those nuts inside. There we go. There's a nut and washer. And I'm going to put the old bump stops back in. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to show this portion of the video or not. Okay, I'm going to go over some tools that I'm going to be using. One is, I basically have a 13/16 inch wrench here, and that fits on either side. It fits on the bolt on this side or the nut on the other side, as well as I have a 13/16 impact bit, and I have my good old trusty cheap air wrench here. And basically I'm going to be loosening these up with this impact driver. I should probably take off the actual nut on the top of this strut. The strut is usually underneath the hood somewhere, but this actually sits in the passenger floorboard. You know, the driver's side is underneath the driver's floorboard. So I may do that next before I start taking all this apart. Okay, this is the passenger side of my floorboard. Now I've already removed my WeatherTech floor mats, but once you do, right here, sorry for the lighting, I have way too much sunlight, but right here normally this would be in the, I'll call it the lock position. You will have to undo these two screws, just 90-degree turn, and when you do, this part of the floorboard, let me see if it will come off now. There we go. It should come off pretty easy. Now with that off, inside all these little crevices here, there's some tools. I've shown that before. If you go back to my dually tire change, you will see where I've had these parts in here. I've already taken them off to speed up some time. And underneath here, you will see that there's some parts extensions for removing your wheels, dually wheels. So now this plastic clip here, let me see, you actually just need to, we'll do this together. And from what I see, okay, there we go. Sorry for the camera shakes there, but there's the floorboard. Now some of you have asked, you know, how do you insulate or sound insulate the front cab better? Well, here's a good snapshot of here. It looks like Mercedes already has a little foam mat, but basically if you took off this whole rubber mat here, you could probably put some sound dampening material on the metal itself. But let's look over here. Right here, there's the top of the strut nuts right there. Yes, there's a Allen screw that you hold the bolt on top, and then this nut you can take off. Okay, we're getting ready to take this bolt off. Now, the old-fashioned way, you'd put an Allen wrench up on top and hold this bolt while you take this nut off with some kind of a box wrench here. Now this is different than the strut components. What I noticed was that it takes a 15/16 inch socket to remove this. And a trick that I have is if you can get an impact wrench or any kind of driver that takes this nut off really fast, you don't need to hold on to the center bolt. So that's what we're gonna do here. Let's see if that works. Just like that, we have this nut that came off, and we never had to hold the center bolt at all. And we'll take this off. Looks like we have basically a washer, and I don't see anything else. Now, I haven't seen anywhere on video where they, this is the top of the strut, when they bring it up through this floorboard, there's a rubber grommet here, and I've never seen anyone pull the strut out assembly on video itself, and I think it's because this is pretty hard to remove. So I'm going to spray some lubricant down here. I'll spray that, the Boeshield T9, and hopefully that strut will come out easier. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll let that soak in here and let that work its way down, and hopefully that strut, so let me show you what I mean, is the top of the strut, this piece here goes up through the floorboard, and I think this section here goes through a rubber grommet, and it gets stuck in that rubber grommet, so it's really hard to pull this shaft back down, and hopefully I won't have a problem with that. Let's see how it goes. Let me show you what I did in advance. Besides putting the spray lubrication here. What else I did was on the top of the strut itself, I took a wooden block here and I pounded it down with this mallet here, or this mini sledgehammer. And that actually got the whole assembly pushed down. It doesn't go all the way, but I have it pushed down. And then on the outside, what you will see here is that this, you can see this dust cover, this boot fell. So part of that shaft started coming down already. So hopefully I'll be able to remove this strut a lot easier than, like I said, I haven't seen where somebody physically takes the strut out. I always see it when the strut is removed after the fact, and hopefully I can capture this on camera. We shall see. Okay, well, I don't know how well the lighting is going to get the top of the strut itself, but I'll do the best I can. Next, I'm going to loosen up these two bolts here and get that strut basically removed from this whole hub assembly. Let's go ahead and get this done. Yeah, nice with the impact wrench. Just like that. Because, yeah, I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but this hole looks like oblong shaped, so you can adjust the camber in and out. Next, we'll do the bottom. If you don't have an air impact wrench, you know, they have plenty of electric impact wrenches that will make your job much easier than the old-fashioned way. So I think what other people do is they drop this hub assembly down a little bit, and that's what I will do, is to make some more room, we'll drop this so it's on these, you can see. That's why I have this jack placed under here. That hopefully that should give me enough room to put it again. There we go. Still has more to go. So the this kind of strut likes to go back up by itself. And, okay, I'll have to remember that this plate goes this way, and right. Did I get that right? It goes this way, pointy side down. And as you see, when you pull this strut down, this kind of strut likes to go back up right away. So that's what's making it tough for the removal. This one should do that. Okay, here we go. Well, let's do a comparison on these struts here. Now, number one, that was the plate you saw before. Let's get rid of this. We're going to reuse this dust cover. So let's get, that's going to go back on the new strut. And let's look at these struts in comparison. Now one's kind of turned sideways, but this is a, lucky we're not saving the strut, but this is a genuine Mercedes strut. I believe actually Bilstein makes these. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I've read somewhere. And then these are the Koni adjustable. Now they're total technology differences. This is I think it's filled with fluid. This is air charged as well. So the difference on these is this one naturally when you compress it. Let me switch my camera angles here. Okay, now that I have the camera angles adjusted, I probably won't be able to pick up all of this on camera, but this is an air charge shock, which is pretty common in OEM comp. So when you push it down and you compress it, it likes to pop back up really fast. Now, based on the strut itself and using the strut, looks like the strut itself is in perfectly good condition. It's not worn out. If it's worn out, you should be able to pull it in and out really easy. So this strut wise, I have about 37,000, maybe a little bit more miles on this, and I don't see any signs. There's no leaking, and the strut itself is performing fine. When I say performing fine, as in there's no problem with it. Now this strut here has some fluid in there, but when you push it in and out, the rebound is it doesn't spring back up right away. And so how struts or shocks work is, you know, the spring takes on the weight and it bounces down, but these struts is really hard to pull back up. That's slowing that spring rate that's going back up. So that's the whole purpose. Okay, we're getting ready to put this new strut back in. Gotta remember to put this reuse the old dust cover. Put that back on. And then don't forget about this washer. Remember the pin side down. And now we're ready to put this strut back in. Let's see if we can do it like this. We're going to have to drop this hub assembly down a little bit. There we go. Okay, let's see if we can get this. It's a little bit tricky here because before we do anything, I'm going to tighten the nut up on top just so the strut doesn't fall back down, just to get it on there. I'll be right back. Okay, now that we got that, I think this dust cover has to actually go over this washer assembly here. Let me see if I can get that. Might do that after the fact. I want to get this strut on here. And let's go ahead and raise this hub back up. There we go. We'll get these bolts in. Okay. Put the lower bolt on. Let's fast forward this portion. We're going to tap gently on this bolt, and I mean gently, just to aid it in. If it's stuck, obviously you don't want to pound on it. I could have probably just wiggled the struts back and forth. Okay, this is on here now. Now, to set up the alignment, basically I'll either be lifting or lowering this hub assembly to get it lined up. Let's see here. Based on memory wise, that looks like about the right distance from here to the end from the old strut. So let's go ahead and tighten everything up. So I need to get this snug, and then we'll go from there. Also, this is holding your whole hub assembly up, so you do not want to be too loose on this for sure. Otherwise, your wheel will go flying. Okay, that's good enough. We'll torque the rest after. And next, all we have to do is put this boot back on all the way. We'll put those sensors back on, wheel back on, and we should be done. Now if I drop this jack, it should have minimum movement. Obviously the strut will extend a little bit more. Let's do it right now. Let's see. It should drop, but the strut should prevent it from... There we go. Okay. Area number 1, passenger side complete. And like I said, we'll put on the sensors and we should be done. Well, here it is, all assembled. I'm about to put the wheel back on, but you can see I put the dust shield back on. The clips, both the clips, I think these are well, sensors, are put back on. I tighten the bolts, and this bolt here where it adjusts the camber, I just put it back in the close to the position that it was originally in on the old strut, and it'll go in for alignment tomorrow. So there it is. Now let's jump on over to the driver's side. Okay, we're about to do the driver's side, and let me show you some things on the driver's side that I didn't show on the passenger side. It's pretty much the same setup, so I'm going to take a mental note of the distance from this edge to the bolt, just so I can get it to the alignment shop. The other thing is, this is how rusty everything is. And what I didn't show on the other side was that I actually spray this Boeshield and do some, see how this corrosion. I'm just putting this Boeshield on there to give it some a protective coating. Now I'll have to wipe off the excess, obviously, and make sure you don't get it on the brake rotors. Now the rotors themselves, you don't want to remove, spray any kind of coating on there, only a cleaner, because the you know, that's how the brakes work, by friction, so you don't want to be putting any kind of coating on there. But this will give it a nice little coating of rust protection. And most people probably don't do that. They'll be perfectly fine, I'm sure, without it, but makes me feel better. Something a little bit different on the driver's side is, you see here, it looks like it has 2 Torx bit screws, so I'm going to take those off. I already found the Torx bit. And we'll have to remove those 2 screws. And that's how you're going to remove this trim. And once you remove this trim, that's how you're going to remove this floorboard. I will remove this, and let me put it back on camera after I take this out. Actually, we could probably do it together right here. So I will take this out. And here's a good image of what you have down below. Now, if you want to reduce that sound, this is where you would put some that sound dampening mat. It usually has an adhesive on there. You might want to put that on there, and maybe another layer of sound insulating material. And if you ever want to get to your Sprinter van chassis battery, it sits underneath this panel here. So that's probably part of the tools that are on the other side that I removed, was to take these. It has a Torx bit kit in there. That's how you remove this and get to your battery. But there's your bolt right there for the strut. So we're gonna do the same thing. Is let me grab this Boeshield T9 and I'm going to spray some on here and let it work itself down. If you saw on the passenger side, I took this bolt out and I pounded, I'm going to show you on this one, but I pounded that strut down to get it through that rubber grommet. So let me let that soak down and I'll take that bolt out, or the nut off. Alright, we're going to get this nut off there, and just like before, I'm going to use my impact driver and get that in here. And you see how fast that was. So this is the washer. It goes in upside down. I'll leave it here, same as the bolt. And what I didn't show on the other side was that I take a wooden block and I put it over this and I'm going to hit it down. And what that's doing is it's basically getting it through that rubber grommet. And I'll spray some more here. Hopefully that makes its way down through that grommet. And it will make removing that strut assembly from down below easier. Let's go ahead and take these struts off. And before I get myself in trouble here, let me remove these sensors. I showed you on the other side what side of the clip you need to push in to get these sensors out. So here's a prime example. You see how that sensor is kind of stuck. Before I like to work on those, I actually like to squirt this in advance. I should have probably done that a while back. Let's see if I can get that. Just like that, the sensor is out. So I'd recommend, you don't want to get that spray inside the contacts themselves. This doesn't have any, that Boeshield doesn't have, I believe it does not have dielectric qualities, so you shouldn't put it on any kind of contacts. And just like before, we'll zip tie this stuff out of the way so we don't turn it into a big job and end up breaking sensor wires. And I've seen on the these replacement videos where they're removing the whole brake assembly and everything, and I think it was because you saw where I pounded down the that top of that strut bolt. I think that's why. If you don't do that, you're gonna have a heck of a time getting these old struts out. Okay, and what we learned on the last side to get this strut down is we're going to drop this hub a little bit. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and then just like that, we'll compress the strut. We'll probably have to compress it again. Okay, and I think I'm going to drop this hub down a little bit more. Compress it again. There we go. Just like that, that's out. We'll take this piece off. And now that we've done the other side, we know how much easier this can be. So I'm putting the washer and the boot back on here on the new strut. I'll compress the strut a little bit. We're gonna get it up. Okay. Use a Sumo spring as the shim so the strut doesn't fall back down. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the strut bolt up on top. This whole strip probably spun while I was doing that. We need to send the struts back down. And this is going to take a little while here. And this side was supposed to be the easy side. How it always goes, right? I think I need to drop the hub a little bit. There we go. Yep, that's all it was. Well, you're probably getting lots of shots of my head, unfortunately. Try to do a better job with the camera angles next time. But this one, I just needed to get this project done. Okay, let's get this tightened down and get this project done and off of our to-do items. Okay, before I tighten this down, I'm just checking the distance. Looks like I need to go up a little bit. Probably need to loosen this. Let me loosen the bottom one and make my camber adjustment. Okay, I've adjusted my camber the best I think I know how, and let's get this done. It's tight. Let's get this one. Let the compressor catch up. Okay, well, everything's all tightened down. Needs to be torqued, sensors put back on, and that should be a wrap on this side. Okay, here is the finished project, you will see the new strut. I showed you the part number before. Reused the dust cover, reinstalled these sensors. I did have a little bit of a mishap. I broke the wheel speed sensor here. I'm not sure if I'll have to replace it or not, but that's something I can easily do. And that's really it. I spent, without doing the actual video portion, I probably spent maybe an hour aside. Now this is the Koni adjustables specifically. I think I gave you a couple of pointers on how to get that old strut out, and I think that's what most people really struggle with, is taking that old strut out. This new one, especially this Koni adjustable, because it's not gas charged, the strut doesn't go back up by itself very fast. So it's pretty easy to install. And if you didn't pay attention at the beginning, I have the struts at the maximum resistance setting or maximum rebound setting. So hopefully this may be one of my final modifications. Aside from this, I may have one more. I didn't explain at the beginning, but the reason I picked the adjustables was because it had the most dampening. Now there's some Bilstein shocks, aftermarket, plain old Bilsteins. And then what you will also see if you really start doing some searching is you will see the ones that have the coilover. They add an additional spring on here. A lot of the 4x4 modifications have that. And I didn't want to do that on this because the actual, we'll call it the structure, the structural, what's holding the weight up is not the strut. This strut is only holding the top of this hub assembly. And the actual spring, let me see if I can get you the actual spring. What's holding this physical weight has nothing to do with this assembly here. Now, if there was a coilover, that'd be a lot of weight sitting on these, just these two bolts. And the chassis is already pretty heavy, so that's probably not the best application in my opinion. On the smaller regular vans, that may be okay, but I know they give an additional 2-inch lift, so they're putting these little coil packs, spring packs on here. And again, that's not the route I went on this one. I'll show you what kind of springs are up in the front here. Okay, this is looking from down below. But if you really look here, the spring pack, there's the driver's side wheel. There's an actual spring. It's an arch spring that goes across to the other side. And basically that spring, you can actually see. Call it a spring, but it's almost like a leaf pack. You see here, this piece right here. If you look underneath here, it goes all the way across, and that is the actual spring. The spring is, it's arched, and that's what's carrying the weight of this chassis. I don't think it's nothing new based on what I've seen. It's on many other vehicle applications. It's been around for a long time, but most of us are familiar with that little spring in the front, but this does not have it. This arched leaf, I think they call it that transverse spring, that is what's carrying the weight. So if you wanted to carry more weight, you'd obviously have to have a beefier spring pack up here. I'm not sure if they have such a thing for this chassis yet or not. Well, that wraps up the video. I'm going to put the wheel on and call it a day. I'll bring it in for an alignment and try to do a couple of thousand miles, and I'll show you a review of what I think of this. So hopefully I gave you some steps and pointers if you decide to do this on your own. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video.